Estamos grabando entonces la clase del día 26 de noviembre del grupo de las 2 de la tarde, de la 1 de la tarde de la UDLA. Estamos revisando la cátedra 2. A complex sentence is an independent clause plus one or more dependent clauses. That's the correct one. Two independent clauses together, that's a compound sentence. Two dependent clauses together, that's a compound sentence. A dependent clause plus a verb phrase, that doesn't make any sense. It's just number one. A compound sentence is two independent clauses linked by a subordinating conjunction. Okay, the very first part of this sentence is true, but the last one is not. Because a compound sentence can be two independent clauses linked by a coordinating conjunction, which is number three. The second alternative seems to be quite similar to the third one, but the problem is that linking device is too broad, it's not specific enough. The very same happens with the fourth alternative, two independent clauses linked by a lexeme, and it doesn't make much sense, right? So because every single word class can be a lexeme. So the correct one would be number three. Conjunctions can be further divided into conjunctions, like the word class can be divided into free and bound. That's not, because those are morphemes. Coordinating and subordinating conjunctions. That's the correct one. Coordinating and correlative conjunctions. Yeah, but those are the derivations for coordinating conjunctions. And finally, fanboys and linking. Those are names given, but they are not part of the definition, right? The acronym fanboys referring to the coordinators, and linking as, I don't know, it's just a word. Dependent clauses are linked to independent ones. Yeah, dependent clauses are linked to independent ones by dependent clauses, right? By subordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions, they link independent clauses, or independent clauses. A linking device is too broad, and a correlative coordinator doesn't make sense with the idea of dependent. Dependent clauses are considered to be sentence fragments. I said this like 1,000 different times during this term. Full sentences is the independent clause. Dependent sentences, that thing doesn't exist. And complex sentences, that's the mixture. That's when you add a dependent clause to an independent one. Subordination, the name given to the process of linking a dependent to an independent clause. And that's it, I think, right? The name given to the process of linking a dependent to an independent clause. Yeah, that's true. The second, the name given to a word class. No, subordination is an effect. Subordinator or subordinating conjunction is a word class. The name given to the process of linking units at the same level? No, because when you're talking about same level, you're referring to coordination. The name given to the process of linking parallel structures is the very same as saying at the same level. Coordination deals with paratactic relationship, quite obvious. Hypertactic means subordination. Semantic relationship and cognitive relationship doesn't make any sense. Correlative conjunctions are also labeled paired conjunctions. It is written, explicitly written within the PowerPoint. So basically, we had 8 different points, and most of you obtained the highest score possible. Some of you less than that, but in a broad sense, most of you obtained the 8 points. Okay. Now let's review the analysis. There we go. And I'm going to put it like horizontally. And now we're going to do this. Okay. After they lost their game, they joined their other teammates and they went to the movies. Okay, so the very first stuff I'm going to say is looking for the dependent clause. After they lost their game, right? I'm going to separate by using square brackets, right? And then I'm going to say what's inside of it. Now, the independent clauses. That's a coordinating conjunction. Crap. Okay, as this is in front of it and it's being separated by a comma with the rest of the sentence, I'm going to say this is an adverbial clause playing the role of adverbial. This is the subordinating conjunction. And now I'm going to say what's inside of this. Um, and now I'm going to do the I'm going to do the rest of this. No, ahí sí.
Profe,
Dígame.
¿y went to no puede ser un phrasal verb?
Podría, no, porque espérame, dame un segundo. Pero me perdí, ya. Respuestas. Went to. ¿Puede ser un phrasal verb? No, no puede ser un phrasal verb. ¿Por qué? Un phrasal verb es un verbo que es seguido por una por un adverbio. Ejemplo, up, algo con up. No sé, give up. ¿Ya? Existen otros que se llaman prepositional verbs, que son verbos que son seguidos por preposiciones. Look for, ¿sí? Pero ambos dos, phrasal and prepositional verbs, ambos dos, su significado no puede ser retribuido, no puede ser obtenido a través de sus componentes. Ejemplo, look for no significa look for, significa search, ¿sí? Debido a aquello es que se asume que son un solo lexema. En el caso que estamos viendo aquí, went to, pareciera ser que went y to fueran siempre pegados juntos, ¿no? Pero para hacer eso tendrían que ser un lexema, solo uno. Para hacer un lexema, went es un verbo, to es un verbo, es una preposición, ¿no? Para hacer solo un lexema tendríamos que, uno, hacer la prueba del significado, o sea que went to no significa go, sino otra cosa que aquí no funciona. Y por otro lado, para que sea solo un solo lexema, estaríamos diciendo que es un semimodal parecido a want to, have to, need to, ought to, be going to. Pero para que sea semimodal, luego de él tiene que tener otro verbo. En la construcción que estamos viendo presente acá, lo que estamos viendo es went, luego to the movies. Por lo tanto, uno, went to, si bien es cierto, pareciera ser un semimodal, no es seguido por un verbo, por lo tanto no es semimodal en este sentido. Y luego de eso, en el contexto sintáctico, the movies es una noun phrase al lado de una preposición. Por lo tanto, muy claramente es una prepositional phrase. Esa es la respuesta, compañero.
Vale, vale, me quedó claro.
Cosa importante. Adverb clause adverbial. ¿Sí? Lo voy a hacer con cajitas y colores. Hay gente que no comprende la idea de que por qué escribimos cosas arriba y cosas abajo. Si creyéramos que esto es una oración, me refiero a las cajitas que estoy haciendo aquí, con colores, diríamos que esas cajitas de colores son una oración. Cada una de esas cajitas de colores corresponde a uno de los posibles elementos de la oración. Lo voy a decir todo esto en inglés para que quede más claro. If you take a look at that sentence is created by following a valency pattern. The valency pattern for that sentence is ASVO, right? And every single one of those elements is being represented by a box. A green box for the adverbial, a purple box for the subject, a light blue box for the verb, and a red box for the object, right? So that's a balancing pattern. Therefore, and as you can see, a sentence is created by units. Those units are the balancing patterns, right? Right. Now, let's take a look at number one. Number one, after they lost their game, they joined their other teammates and they went to the movies. The thing is this: why do I write adverb clause adverbial on top, above the sentence, and not below the sentence? Because that thing is one of the valency pattern elements. When I say that thing, I'm talking about the structure after they lost their game. That thing is called clause, and that clause is an adverb clause playing the role of adverbial inside of the valency pattern, and that's why I'm writing that name on top of it. Then below, I'm saying what are, yeah, which are the members or the elements which we're going to use to create that clause. For example, the subordinating conjunction, and then as this is a clause, this I'm going to state another valency pattern: noun phrase subject, verb phrase verb, noun phrase object. And below that, I'm saying what's inside of them. This is extremely important, but extremely important to keep, to follow, to maintain the very same order. Why? Otherwise, if you change this, if you don't do it in the very same way in which I'm presenting you, I'm telling you to do it, it is impossible to notice, to realize, to evaluate, to assess whether you're able to recognize the different structures inside of a clause or inside of a sentence or even inside of a phrase. It's impossible and you will have less points, okay? And you will have less points. So be very careful with this. Couple of things I'm also I want you to understand is the fact that at this point of the course, if you are not able to recognize phrases, then everything will be much difficult for you during the exams. If you are not able to recognize phrases, then your entire analysis will be wrong, okay? So please, if you don't do it, if you have problems, if you don't know why or how, please try to study, ask questions, even though we are at the very end of the course, right? So basically, that's the whole idea. Let's go for the second. Laura forgot her friend's birthday, so she sent her a card when she finally remembered. It's a really simple one. It's a really, really, really simple one. I can see the adverbial clause right here. She finally remembered. This is an adverbial clause. Adverbial, why do I know? Or how do I know this is an adverbial clause? Because I can move it and place it at the very beginning, right? I can say, when she finally remembered, comma, Laura forgot, and all the stuff. Right, and this is a subordinating conjunction. This is a noun phrase subject. This is a pronoun head. And this is a verb phrase verb. And finally, is an adverb pre-modifier, and remember this is the verb head. You can actually separate finally from remembered and write it down or label it as an adverb phrase adverbial, adverb head, and I don't have any problem with that. I also believe it's correct. Then the independent clauses: Laura forgot her friend's birthday, coordinating conjunction. She sent her a card, right? Noun phrase subject, verb phrase verb, noun phrase object, noun phrase subject, verb phrase verb, noun phrase object, noun phrase object, indirect object, direct object. Laura is a noun head, verb head. This is a determiner, pre-modifier, and this is a noun pre-modifier, and birthday is a noun head. This is a pronoun, a verb, another pronoun, a determiner, and a noun head. Okay, possible problems. Some of you made an entire phrase right here, right? Which is impossible. Why? Well, mostly because they are answering different questions. She sent what? What did she send? A car. To whom? To her. And now you see that they are two different units, right? Another problem, some other people confused. I mean, yeah, they got mixed, these two different. Even though here is written in the same manner, they are not playing the same role. In the very first noun phrase is a determiner, right? But in the second one is replacing an entity, therefore is a pronoun. It's called object pronoun. Ningún problema. It's called object pronoun. Simple and easy. Let's go with the last one. Interesante. Te voy a dar la respuesta teórica y después una respuesta simple. La respuesta teórica a un sustantivo como Juan, en inglés, le puedo colocar un apóstrofe y una S, lo que significa posesión, posesivo. In grammar, we call that genitive phrase. Genitive phrases are one of the few remaining elements from Old English, and those elements are called cases. Old English has cases, that is to say, grammatical changes, or form changes, inflections, morphemes and stuff that we put in place in different places with different lexemes so as to represent grammatical meaning. That is to say, that final S is a morpheme, and that morpheme is the Z3 morpheme, right? Then it's called genitive phrase. That is to say, it is telling you that the coming noun, in this case, birthday, belongs to Juan. In this case, her friend's birthday is the birthday of her friend, right? In Spanish. Explicación simple, es un posesivo, se le coloca un sustantivo, una S, para decir que lo que sigue, el sustantivo que sigue le pertenece. Corta. But in grammar terms, it's much wider than the other one. Yes. Number 3, after the teacher chose groups, John and Sarah were selected as partners for a project, yet Sarah did most of the work. También estaba fácil, eran todas iguales, todas muy parecidas. After the teacher chose groups, John and Sarah were selected as partners for a project, yet Sarah did most of the work. Noun phrase subject, why? Well, because I can replace this by using the pronoun they. And as there is a coordinating conjunction right here, I have two noun heads, John and Sarah. Where selected is a verb phrase. Verb is an auxiliary verb, pre-modifier, with a verb head. Some people believe that selected is an adjective. They are wrong because this is a passive voice, right? It's a grammar construction. Where selected for what? For what? For a project. This is a prepositional phrase object. Therefore, we're selected for a project as partners. It sounds weird, but it works, I think. Prepositional phrase. Noun phrase. Me detengo. En español porque es casi un reto. Mucha gente se equivoca y se equivoca en lo mismo. Eso es súper extraño debido a que son análisis. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Bueno, aquí tenemos la increíble circunstancia de que 10 o 12 personas conectan sus cerebros de manera, no sé, metafísica durante el desarrollo de un ejercicio y tienen exactamente el mismo error. Eso es muy raro. Solo lo quiero avisar. Pusieron objetos, noun phrase objetos, o sea, prepositional phrases created out of a preposition head and a noun phrase object, and that thing is impossible for various reasons. The first reason is an object is part of the valency pattern, therefore you can't find it inside of a phrase, first of all. Second, prepositional phrases, they are created by prepositions, but prepositions, they require the presence of an obligatory element next to them, therefore they are always complement. Two reasons. With those mistakes, you're telling me, number one, you don't recognize the difference between a clause and a phrase, which is really, really, really worrying. And the other one is that you're not recognizing what's a prepositional phrase. And we have been talking about this for almost 4 months. The same for the other one. Preposition head. And here we have the noun phrase complement.
Profe,
Dígame.
yo en esa parte dejé as partners for a project todo como una preposition phrase object. ¿Estaría bien?
Podría pasar, sí. Podría pasar. Lo otro que no dije, for a project, John and Sarah were selected. ¿Para qué fueron seleccionados? For what? ¿Cacha lo que pregunto? For what? For a project. ¿Cachai? As partners. Podría ser adverbial, la muevo. John and Sarah, for a project, were selected as partners. Sí, también puede ser adverbial. Sí, está bien.
Profe,
Dígame.
y yo puse as partners como prepositional phrase object. ¿Qué tal eso?
¿Pero a qué respondería as partners?
Fueron seleccionados.
Sí,
¿O no?
pero ¿cuál es la pregunta que genera que tú creas que es un objeto? Responde a qué, responde a cómo, cuándo, dónde, por qué.
Según yo, responde como a ¿para qué? Que fueron seleccionados ¿para qué? No sé, creo yo.
Yo creo que responde a un cómo. ¿Cómo fueron seleccionados as partners? For what? For a project. Yo creo que si alguno de los dos fuera objeto, podría ser for a project, más que as partners. Creo yo,
Yeah.
¿ya? Porque es un cómo as partners y un qué es for a project, ¿cachai?
Sí, pues verdad.
Última, most of the work. No lo hemos visto, así que acepté varias formas diferentes. Algunos most solo, otros of the work solo, otros todos juntos. Pero aquí fue mucho más flexible. No lo hemos visto. Did, what's this. Las prepositional phrases, vuelvo con ellas. Las prepositional phrases tienen entonces la capacidad de contener una noun phrase complement adentro, pero las prepositional phrases también pueden ser pre-modified por determiners o por adverbs. No lo sabían, ahora lo saben. Fui súper laxo con eso. ese es el resultado de los análisis de la cátedra 2. Toda persona que tenga problemas, le pido que me envíe un correo para poder agendar una reunión y revisar su análisis en más detalle. ¿Alguna duda final? ¿No? Ya. Vamos a ver entonces la revisión de los ejercicios de la clase pasada. Having learned his lesson, he went out to play cricket. Okay, having learned his lesson, he went out to play cricket. What I'm going to do is drawing. Oh, me duele la espalda. Un segundo, chiquillo. Oh. Okay. Okay. He went out. Okay, here I have my dependent clause performing the role of adverbial just like the other ones. But this has a different name. It's a non-finite ing clause performing the role of adverbial. Here we have my verb phrase, verb with two different verbs, the auxiliary verb, pre-modifier having, and learned verb here. And then I have his lesson. Have you learned what? His lesson with a determiner, pre-modifier, and a noun head. Then I have a noun phrase subject and a verb phrase verb. He went out. Went out. I believe it's a phrasal verb, but we can actually review it perhaps. And then what I have is this. I have another non-finite clause to play what? Cricket. This is another non-finite, but to infinitive. How do I know that? Because of the form of the verb. Performing the role of, he went. Wait, yeah. He went. Where? Out. Adverb phrase. Adverbial. Adverb. Head. He went where? Out. To do what? To play cricket. Therefore, this is an object with a verb phrase verb. To play is just one verb. And cricket is a noun phrase object with a noun head. And that's it. Number one done.
Profe,
Dígame.
aún así cuando la non-finite clause está justo al lado de la verb phrase, ¿debe separarse? No puede quedar dentro, ¿cierto?
¿Cómo? Perdón, no entiendo.
Por ejemplo, dejar la verb phrase como went out to play. Y ahí, y dentro de esa verb phrase, que esté la non-finite.
Comprendo la pregunta. Pueden pasar varias cosas. La primera cosa es que estemos hablando de un verbo semimodal. Los verbos semimodales son verbos normales, no auxiliares, o sea, son verbos que se pueden ocupar por sí mismos, como por ejemplo play se puede ocupar por sí mismo, pero will no se puede ocupar por sí mismo. Existe una cosa que es la mezcla de los dos, como por ejemplo need. I need to play, ¿cierto? Need es un semimodal. Los semimodales son verbos que son seguidos por to. Y luego de ellos viene el verb get, ¿cierto? I need to, ¿qué cosa? Play. I need to play. Entonces la verb phrase sería need to play, ¿ya? En ese caso, quedaría junto. En el caso que estamos viendo acá, si tú ves bien, dice went out to play. Went. ¿Para dónde fue? Out. ¿Para hacer qué cosa? To play, ¿cierto? Por lo tanto, no pueden quedar juntos. Primer motivo, porque out está marcando un lugar, ¿cierto? Y este lugar, entonces, es una estructura que interrumpe la conexión, la posible conexión entre went y play. Ese es un motivo. Segundo motivo es que, no, yo diría que ese es el gran motivo en este caso. No sé si le queda claro.
Sí, ahí quedó mucho más claro, gracias, profe.
Ok. Walking along the street one day, I saw a dead cobra. Esto también está muy fácil. No lo voy a sobreexplicar, solo voy a marcar adverb. No. Non-finite. No. Non-finite ing clause adverbial. Walking along the street one day. Along is a preposition. And then you create the analysis. Walking where? Along the street. The street. When one day. No, no sale de aquí, sale de arriba. One day. I saw a dead cobra. I saw this. No voy a decir más de lo que está en rojo. Tenemos la 2.
En ese caso, noun phrase en a one day no puede contar como adverbial porque estaría respondiendo a la pregunta.
Perdón. Sí, no, yo me equivoqué. Tú tienes razón. Perdón. Sí. Porque es un cuándo, ¿cierto? Adverbial. Tú tienes razón. Perdón. Avanzo. Número 3. Leaving the forest, we advanced into the open plain. Es exactamente igual. Y de hecho, miren, si pongo el corrector, me pide poder colocarle una coma. Es una non-finite ing clause adverbial. Ahí está el verbo. Leaving, ¿qué cosa? The forest. Ahí está. Vamos con la 4. Not knowing my way, I asked a policeman. Not knowing my way. Not knowing my way. This is the same idea. It's always the same sentence. Non-finite ing clause adverbial I asked a policeman. The only thing that I want you to remember is this. Knowing is the verb head, but not is present there as a negative. This is new, be careful, negative particle. Not, the word not in this verb phrase is a negative particle. Why? Because it is providing the idea of polarity to the coming verb. In a normal, regular verb phrase, the word not is not considered to be a negative particle. Why not? Because it is considered to be part of the auxiliary verb. For example, if I say, I will not play, then will not is the auxiliary verb. And then play is just the verb head. But how do I do that? How can I prove it? I can prove it because not is usually contracted or assimilated or linked with the auxiliary verb. And my proof is the presence of won't. I can say, I won't play. And because of that, you can see how the negative particle is attached to the auxiliary and not to the main verb, right? Therefore, in a non-finite non-finite verb phrase, the negative particle not is written, okay? So careful with that. And then my way is just a noun phrase. A noun phrase. I'm not knowing what thing, my way, right? So it's just a noun phrase. Object. I won't say much about the rest of it. And finally, una estupidez esto que está pasando. And finally, no puedo, no me deja, perdón, no sé qué hice. And finally, being paralytic, he could not walk. And it's the very same stuff. It's the very, 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 very same one. And I'm going to do it right now. So being paralytic, being what? Paralytic. It's a non-finite ing clause adverbial verb phrase verb head. This is an adjective, subject complement, but we don't have any subject. Adverb, adjective, head, and then the rest of it is just normal thing. Y ahí está. ¿Dudas sobre la revisión de los ejercicios?
Yo tengo una duda con este último.
Dígame.
Y paralytic no puede ser noun phrase object porque igual te está respondiendo la pregunta being guapo, ¿no?
Mira. Es un adjetivo. Si es adjetivo no puede ser noun phrase, y si no es noun phrase no puede ser object.
Ah, ya. Yeah. Oh, ok.
Paralytic. Más preguntas.
Profe, yo tengo un par de preguntas, pero en sí de los PowerPoint.
Dígame.
En la diapositiva de tense verb hay una afirmación que es que en esa, la última afirmación sobre que puede incluir un modal verb, pero no puede incluir como el tense marcado. Si lo puede como explicar, por favor.
Sí. A finite verb phrase either has a modal or is marked for tense. ¿Qué significa marked for tense? La presencia de un Z2, un ED1. O sea, he plays, he played. ¿Sí? Sí. A finite verb phrase either has a modal. ¿Sabemos lo que son los modales o no? O sea, una finite verb phrase tiene ya sea un modal o está marcada para el tense, pero no los dos. O sea que si yo hago esto, le pongo un modal, ya no puedo marcar al main verb con tense. Si alguien escribiera eso, estaría malo. A eso se refiere. No sé si le queda claro.
Sí. Y hubo un ejercicio en el cual había una oración que es about going to New Zealand. Y no recuerdo si tomé bien como lo que dijo, pero mencionó que al no tener auxiliar, no tiene tense.
Escriba la oración en el chat y para revisarla. The person to ask about going to New Zealand is Beck. Can I say she is Beck? Yeah, I can say that. Therefore, this is a noun phrase. She is Beck. Noun phrase object, right? She is like that. The person and now here I have the non-finite to infinitive to ask about going to New Zealand, to ask about going to New Zealand, prepositional phrase, but inside of this prepositional phrase, I have an ing clause, going to New Zealand. Okay, this is something really different. Be very careful because prepositional phrases, I already told you they can have noun phrases as complements, but at the very same time, they can also have non-finite clauses as complements. And here we have one of those examples, right? One of those examples. So the very first, okay, so I'm going to state the name for this. This whole stuff is a non-finite to infinitive clause performing the role, I believe, of a post modifier. Inside of it, we have to ask is a verb phrase verb. To ask is a to infinitive, therefore one single verb, right? And here we have another one. To ask about this is a prepositional phrase acting as an object, right? Where the preposition about, right? And next to that, I have I change colors. A non-finite ing clause performing the role of complement for that preposition. And inside of that, I have going, which is a verb phrase verb made out of the verb head going, and then to New Zealand is a prepositional phrase going where? To that place, right? Is an adverbial of place, I believe, with a preposition head and a noun phrase complement, New Zealand, noun head, and that's it.
En el caso de cuando se refirió al no tener auxiliar, sería en el caso de que diría I am going. Al tener auxiliar de am, no sería una non-finite.
Sí, tal cual lo vimos en el slide pasado, si una verb phrase tiene un verbo modal, es finite. ¿Sí? Si la verb phrase no tiene verbo modal y no tiene tense, en otras palabras, no puedes saber a qué tiempo se refiere, es non-finite. No sé si le queda claro.
Sí, profe.
Perfecto.
Y la última, que fue otro ejercicio que vimos, no me quedó muy claro el uso de in order to.
Ya, in order to es complejo debido a que autores, cuando digo autores, digo Cambridge Line Dictionary y some others, lo reconocen in order to como una preposición. Las tres palabras, dame un segundo, chiquillos, por favor. Perdón, chiquillos. Ahora sí. ¿En qué estábamos? Perdón, estábamos hablando de in order to. La compañera pregunta, y la otra duda que tengo es in order to, and you have to look at the picture really carefully in order to see all the detail. Ya, una opción es que in order to, como lo dicen algunas personas en algunos lados, cuando digo eso hablo de Cambridge Online Dictionary y hablo de, ¿qué más puede ser? Puede ser Viber quizás también. Se asume que es una preposición, una multi-word preposition, o sea, una preposición hecha de más de una palabra, más de un lexema, ¿sí? O sea, es un lexema hecho de tres words, ¿no? En ese caso, en el análisis que pone la compañera, you have to look at the picture really carefully in order to see all the detail. In order to see all the detail, you have to look at the picture really carefully in order to see all the detail. Sí, suena difícil eso porque in order to y después tenemos el verbo see. Lo que si decimos que in order to es una preposición, see all the details sería una cláusula, debido a que see es un verbo. Cada vez que veo un verbo veo una cláusula. En este caso, debido a que in order to sería la preposición, sí quedaría solo, sería un bare infinitive. Estaríamos hablando de una non-finite bare infinitive clause. Difícil. Segunda opción, no ver a in order to como una preposición, sino verla como una prepositional phrase, donde in sería la preposition head, order sería la noun phrase complement y to sería una to infinitive clause post modifier de order. Serían las dos opciones de análisis que yo le veo a la unidad in order to. No sé si me pude explicar.
Ahí sí, profe. Gracias.
Ok. ¿Alguna otra pregunta? ¿No? Ya. Perfecto. Con esto cerramos entonces la revisión de la cátedra y finalizamos la revisión del PPT. Muy bien. Lo que yo voy a hacer ahora es esto. Les voy a enviar un set de ejercicios. Este set de 21 ejercicios de Non-Finite Clauses. Usted los va a realizar, ¿sí? Nos vamos a juntar, los vamos a revisar y vamos a dejar un tiempo para cualquier pregunta que tenga respecto al ejercicio de la próxima semana. ¿Ya? Siendo las 14:23 y siendo que son 21, son hartos, nos vamos a juntar a las 16 horas, considerando que la clase termina a las 16:30. Entonces, en esa media hora vamos a revisar lo que podamos y vamos a ver todas las dudas que ustedes puedan tener. ¿Sí? Les envío esto a su correo, nos juntamos a las 16. ¿Queda claro lo que hay que hacer? Estamos grabando. Ya, quedando media hora entonces, lo que vamos a hacer es revisar el análisis de las oraciones entregadas y en la medida que vayan teniendo dudas nos van avisando y vamos viendo qué es lo que podemos hacer. Okay, so the very first one, to speak in class is encouraged, and obviously this is the non-finite one, followed by a prepositional phrase. This is a non-finite true infinitive clause acting as a subject because I can replace it by a pronoun. It is encouraged, right? And then the common thing, verb, phrase, verb head, and then where in class, adverbial, and the preposition head, and the noun phrase complement, and then noun head, and then later on is encouraged, right? Verb, phrase, verb, and auxiliary verb, and verb head. Okay, so true infinitive clauses, they can perform the role of a subject as well. Second, speaking in class is encouraged. This very same idea, but in this case, the difference is the type of non-finite clause. In this example, you can see how an ing, a non-finite ing clause, is also performing the role of a subject, right? Non-finite ing clause acting as, beg your pardon, as subject, right? And over again is encouraged. Verb, phrase, verb, and the verb, phrase, verb, head, prepositional phrase, adverbial, preposition head, noun phrase complement, noun head. That's it. Then number 3, for him to speak in class requires self-confidence. And here we have something quite similar as well, but different in somehow, because the subject is created by a prepositional phrase, right? So what we have is a prepositional phrase. For him to speak in class requires self-confidence, right? It requires self-confidence. So this is a prepositional phrase subject. And here we have a verb, phrase, verb, and self-confidence requires this. This is a noun. Noun phrase requires this object, right? Right. So here we have our noun phrase complement. So prepositional head, and then the noun phrase complement created by the presence of him, which is a pronoun head, which is being followed by a to infinitive, right? Okay, the name is really long. I'm going to replace that very, very long name by just saying to infinitive. To infinitive clause acting as a complement, and inside of that I have the verb phrase, verb to speak, and now I repeat the very same stuff as above. And that's it. Okay, now we have number 4, quite simple. He loves to participate, and quite clearly we can see how the to infinitive clause goes from to onwards, right? And the rest, this is a to infinitive clause, non-finite to infinitive clause acting he loves this as an object, and all the rest of it is just as normal clause, noun phrase subject and the verb phrase verb. I won't say much about that. He dislikes sitting quietly. Now you have to be careful with this because I know he dislikes, right? He dislikes what? Sitting quietly. So both of them are the non-finite clause. Sitting quietly. And this is an ing clause. Non-finite ing clause acting as an object, right? He dislikes what? What does he dislike? He dislikes sitting quietly. Verb phrase verb. Verb head, and quietly is my adverb phrase, adverbial, made out of an adverb head. The teacher encourages his participation. I think this is not well written because of reason, right? Because of reasons. The teacher is my subject. This is my verb. What does the teacher encourage? His participation. Where? In discussions. Wait, but the problem is that participating, well, that would be the problem, right? Participating. And I have a couple of things to say about this. First of all, participating seems to be the present participle form, the ing form of the verb participate, right? So in that respect, we would say, okay, this is a non-finite clause, right? But on the other hand, if you take a closer look, you will see the presence of a determinate premodifier, in this case, his, right? Now we know that inside that determinants, they tend to go, in most cases, they tend to go with nouns. And the problem is that participating is not a noun, but a verb, right? Therefore, I believe that this clause is faulty. It's not well written because participating must not be there, right? So I would rewrite this and change participating by participation, right? The other way would be erasing his, right? And then you will have a non-finite ing clause, right? But this number 6 is faulty. Students encouraged by their teachers do well. This is a very interesting clause because, well, not clause, is a sentence. This is a very interesting sentence because you have verbs, right? You have two verbs. Students encouraged by their teachers do well, right? But the problem is, or the question would be, which one of those is the main verb, encouraged or do, right? And I believe that I can actually replace students encouraged by their teachers. I can replace it by they, right? By the pronoun they. Therefore, I can say they do well. They do well. They do well. Yeah. So that's a noun phrase. Therefore, students, noun head, and here we have the non-finite. Encouraged by their teachers. Ah, crap, whatever. Encouraged by their teachers, right? This would be my ED clause, non-finite ED clause, right? Non-finite ED clause acting as a post modifier with encouraged, verb phrase verb, verb head, and next to that, the prepositional phrase subject, right? By whom? By their teachers, right? That's why it's a prepositional phrase. I mean, that's why it's an object. Preposition head, noun phrase complement, determiner, premodifier, noun head, and that's it. He gave up his job to travel the world. It's the very same idea. I won't say much because I think it's simple. He gave up his job to travel the world. Non-finite to infinitive. For this, right? To infinitive clause object. We wanted to ask her to come along. We wanted to ask her to come along. To come along. We wanted to ask her to come along. Come along seems to be, I might be wrong, but I believe come along, come along is a phrasal verb. Phrasal, to arrive. Therefore, okay, and this is a to infinitive as well. We want to ask her this object, no problem. Direct object, yeah. If it's the only object, it's the direct object. The person to make the report to at the police station was the sergeant. This is also difficult. She was the sergeant, right? So this is a very big noun phrase subject. The sergeant. The person, right? Okay, and this is a to infinitive. Acting as a post inside to make the report to at the police station, right? To make the report to at the police station. The police station. Nothing new.
Profe,
Dígame.
la to infinitive clause de esta última que hicimos no es non-finite o son simplemente se lo saltó.
No, me los salto porque no lo alcanzo a escribir. Lo dije, lo dije. Todas son non-finite. Y el tipo de non-finite es la forma del verbo. Si yo leo true infinitive clause, es una non-finite true infinitive clause. Pero si te dais cuenta, todo lo que necesito para escribir eso no me alcanza en la pantalla. ¿Cachai? Por eso lo hago true infinitive, o ing, o ed, o bare infinitive.
Ah, ya, ya.
Lo vuelvo a repetir, no quiero equivocaciones. Todas son non-finite y yo no escribo non-finite porque no me alcanza en el espacio que tengo que hacer el análisis, ¿ya? No quiero equivocaciones, lo vuelvo a repetir, cuarta vez, todas son non-finite. Ya, vamos con la que sigue. 11. Esto es más parecido al nivel del ejercicio. He is a thoroughly spoiled child, being the only one in the family. Being the only one in the family, he is a thoroughly spoiled child. Entonces aquí va la non-finite ing clause. Adverbial, being the only one in the family. ¿Cierto? Only. ¿Qué es only? Un adjective. Es un enumerator, head, in the family. Where in the family? Y al otro lado, he is a thoroughly spoiled child. Y ahí hay una adjective phrase. Voy a hacer esta. Thoroughly spoiled. Eso es una adjective phrase. Thoroughly spoiled child. Y ahí queda. You are the only one capable of solving the problem. You are the only one capable of solving the problem. Este es más difícil. Of, y ahí está. Esto es una adjective phrase. ¿Cierto? Sí. De aquí. Acá no hay problema porque todo esto es igual que siempre. Y aquí hay algo nuevo. Mucho cuidado. Las adjective phrases pueden tener prepositional phrases adentro, pero esas prepositional phrases son complements. Tal cual lo marco aquí. Y al lado tengo la ing clause complement de la preposición, que adentro tiene la verb phrase verb solving y que al lado tiene la noun phrase solving this. Ahí está. Interesante. Si van teniendo dudas, me van avisando. Nos quedan exactamente, creo que alrededor de 11 minutos. Before becoming a bank robber, he was a police officer. Creo que before es una preposition. O una conjunction. Las preposiciones o conjunctions. Yo dejaría esto como una conjunction entonces. Before becoming a bank robber. No, ok, hago. Becoming a bank robber. Esta es una ing clause adverbial. He was this. Right. Subordinating conjunction. Verb phrase verb. Noun phrase subject. Determine a premodifier and then bank robber. Noun premodifier and then noun head. And that's it. 14. See no employment prospect. He became self-employed. Fácil también. Seeing, ahí está. Es una ing clause adverbial. Verbo, no employment prospect. Verb phrase verb. Verb head. No. Determiner. Premodifier. Employment. Noun. Premodifier and prospect. Noun head. He became this. Employed. Adjective. La última. 15. Trained as an acrobat since young. Y se repite siempre lo mismo. Esta es una ed clause. Esta es una prepositional phrase. Creo que es un objeto. An. Acrobat. Finalmente, since young es otra prepositional phrase, pero de tiempo, ¿no? Since young. Y el resto es una cláusula común y corriente. No, perdón. Eso. Eso, mis distinguidos. Nos quedan 6 minutos para cualquier duda que tenga. Dígame.
Ahí en la cláusula independiente no debería ser solo has junta.
Fabricio, perdón, pero se pegó todo lo que dijo. Solo escuché solo has juntas.
¿Se me escucha muy mal? ¿Se escucha ahora?
Sí, ahí sí.
En has no debería ser solo la verb phrase y amazed audience debería ser la frase, ¿o no?
No, mira, tradúcelo. Ella,
Eh, Ella tiene audiencias impresionadas con
no,
su
ella
increíble.
ha impresionado audiencias.
Ay,
¿Cachai? Lo que estás viendo has amazed se llama presente perfecto.
vale, vale, queda claro.
¿Ya? Eso. Noelia, profe, va a subir la grabación de esta clase y de la anterior. La anterior ya la subí y la de esta clase cuando termine rendereo y subo. Si no la subo durante el fin de semana, escríbame muy enojado el día lunes y para que me acuerden de subirla. Dudas, 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 dudas. Quedan 5 minutos. ¿Estamos listos entonces? Perfecto. Como ven, chiquillos, chiquillas, chiquilles, distinguidos, esto es exactamente igual a todo lo que hemos hecho. ¿Qué es la dificultad que debe esperar? Debe esperar de la 15 en adelante. Esa es la dificultad que debe esperar para el ejercicio. Nos juntamos el viernes entonces en el ejercicio, paso lista, entrego las instrucciones, usted lo hace y estamos, ¿ya? Cualquier cosa que necesiten por correo, me puedo demorar en contestar, pero contesto siempre. Que estén todos súper, les subo esto lo antes posible. Que tengan un buen fin de. Que estén muy bien.
Gracias, profe.
Chao, profe.
Chao, chao.
Chao, profe, gracias.